Hi everyone, welcome back to the Transitions Collective. I'm your host, Mary Clavier. This week I'm bringing you an interview with Kate MacKinnon. Kate is formerly from the banking world and now runs her own business as a Feng Shui expert. So tune in as we talk about energy, how it impacts your business, and the juggle between corporate and the creative space. I hope you enjoy. Hi Kate, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you for having me. I'm so
Thanks
excited.
thanks for being on the show. I'm so excited too. We're going to have so many interesting and cool topics and discussions for today.
Yay.
Okay, so before we jump in, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and your family?
Yeah, so I grew up in Connecticut, and I was one of 6 children. My dad was a doctor, my mom was a nurse. And part of my story, I always tell it, it's an important part. There were 3 things that really impacted me when I was growing up. One, when I was a year and a half, I had meningitis, and I lost the hearing in my left ear.
Wow.
And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then when I was 4, my mom passed away, and then my dad remarried, and I have 2 younger brothers and sisters. And the third thing is I grew up with 3 older brothers. And sort of why those are all important is I really feel like, my hearing loss has taught me to hear differently. And so where I am today, I learned how to hear the subtext of what people say, and I hear well. I just don't hear out of my left ear, but I've developed all these other capacities to really learn from my environment and be aware of my environment. And so I always say I watch what people are saying more than what they're actually saying, because body language says a lot about what they're really saying. It's like, yeah, it's like I always like watching TV, turn the sound off. And my mom really was, when I talk about it, it's a heartbreak. But really, I used to say, who would I be if she didn't die? And I now say, I am who I am because she died. And I have tremendous compassion and a capacity for empathy. And it says a lot about who I am and what I do. And I feel like, it's given me grit, if nothing else. And then having 3 older brothers, I had to be better than him. I had to get out there. I played football with them, and I just always had to be better. So it made me very competitive. So that's my family. I just think it says a lot about who I am.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's why I like to ask that, because you always get different perspectives from people on,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It informs me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. And when you look back, my goodness, like it's very interesting when you look back even at your own story and how you got to be where you are. Yeah, it's fascinating. So actually I want to talk a little bit about that too before we talk more about your specific business. But you were in the corporate world for quite some time and recently transitioned to having your business now with, I'm going to say it right, Feng Shui.
Perfect.
Yes. I wasn't sure how that was going to go, but I did it.
Great. You did great.
So can you tell us a little bit about, I mean, obviously there's a big story there, but a little bit about your transition to where you are now?
Yeah, so I had a good long career. I retired a year and a half ago. And when I was in school, I was actually a psych major, and technology as we know it today didn't exist. And in my very first job, I worked at Barnard College, and I wanted to be either a dean or a therapist was what I thought I wanted to be as a psych major. And I was always, by the way, in the background, I was always an artist. I've done art my entire life. My parents felt that I should get a liberal arts education and not go to art school, which was sort of one of my big disappointments, but it ended up being perfect for me. And so when I moved to New York City and worked at Barnard, I discovered I didn't want to be a dean. I discovered I didn't want to be a therapist. What I discovered was commercial art in New York City. And my very, very first job, I was a receptionist. And it was the first year that Barnard College automated their admissions process. And they brought in this huge word processor, like I always say, little screen, big body. And I was the backup operator, and I started working on it, and I discovered I had an aptitude for it. And not only did I have an aptitude for it, I loved it. I loved, making the text and merging. And I always say that job taught me everything I ever needed to know about technology. And so I left there shortly afterwards, and I had sort of my first, if you will, entrepreneurial experience, because I decided I want to be a freelance graphic artist, and I also did word processing on the side. And I ended up working for a company where this woman recognized that I had lots of talents, and she just gave me so many. She said, "Here, go, have you ever done a feasibility study?" I said, "No." "Here, do this. Have you ever done this?" "Here." "Oh, become the expert to fix the computers, teach the lawyers how to," I mean, I did it all.
Yeah.
And, and then after 7 years, she said, "I love you. You're really great, but there's no place else for you to go, that you have this capacity to go. You are a business systems analyst," which I didn't know what I was. And she said, "Banks are hiring people like you." So I interviewed at JP Morgan, what was then Chase, where I interviewed at Chase. And they hired me in technology. And actually I was in the business in technology. And that's how I got really in the bigger corporate world. And, many years I was there as an employee. Then I got downsized and I became a consultant. They kept hiring me back, but I worked for lots of other banks. And so that was pretty much my career up till in 2000. So in 1999 I did a project in Hong Kong, and I always was exploring what else I wanted to do. I always would work with coaches to say, what's next, what else. And I was working with a coach in 1999, and I was going on a business trip to Hong Kong, and she did this exercise with me where she said, if you think about when you were 7 years old, what did you think about when you went to sleep at night? And I immediately said, rearranging people's houses and buying furniture for my best friend's dollhouse. And she was the one in 1999, never heard of it before. I said, "Have you ever heard of Feng Shui?" And I had not. And she said, "When you go to Hong Kong, I want you to go on a tour of Hong Kong." And she said, "They'll probably have something about Feng Shui," which they did. And I came back, and I just always say that Feng Shui found me. I wasn't looking for it. Feng Shui found me. I got certified in 2000, and I continued to do it on the side while I was in corporate until I retired. So here I am.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm excited to hear so much more about it, especially because it's maybe similar for you too. And I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but the whole, corporate versus something creative, it's really, and I do these Herman Brain profiles, and dominant instrument assessments, and they're very polar opposite, actually, the analytical part of the brain and the emotional people aspect, and that creativity. It can be very polarizing. So it's interesting that you've done both,
Yeah. Well, what I discovered is, I didn't know it, but I am very left brain, right brain. And so I always say I was STEM before people had a term for STEM. So I was always good in math. I was always good in science. I'm old enough that when I was in high school, I wanted to take physics. I didn't want to take chemistry. And they said, "No, girls can't take physics." And I said, "But I want to take it." And I took it. And there were 2 girls in the class, and we were both the top grades in the class. I love physics.
That's amazing.
But I'm surprised that I'm in Feng Shui because of that energy.
Right.
But I also, when I was in college and I did psychology, I did statistics, and I tutored kids in statistics. I mean, it's crazy, but I just did it because I didn't know any better. And so that artist part of me was always there. And then the technical, not the technical, really the science part. So when I was working in the corporate environment at Schlumberger, there was a point where I had to decide, was I going to continue doing the freelance graphics and word processing on the side, or take a job in systems. And I went with systems. And what I discovered in my entire career is that I always brought that creative people side. I was always I'm always intuitive. And so working in a bank where most people are very linear, I brought that whole other elliptical thinking. And I think really actually what made me very successful. Now I'm very, very analytical. I'm a real problem solver, but my brain I work with so many engineers and they're straight line. And I'm like looking at how everything ties together so that I come up with one whole process.
Yeah.
And that's to me, that's Do you know what I mean? That's the creative part of my brain.
Right.
And that's what
That's awesome. Yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah,
That it makes a big difference. Yeah. And you're definitely analytical if you wanted to take physics and like, you
exactly.
know.
But I mean,
Okay.
in many ways I was, I've done, I don't know that you know Myers-Briggs.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So I would do these exercises in Myers-Briggs, and I would always be in an area by myself because I
Right.
was fish out of water in a
Right.
bag, but it worked.
Yes.
I
Yeah.
gotta tell
Yeah.
you, it worked.
Well,
And
and I mean, I could talk for days on that too, but the whole like having diversity in your team, that's part of the point, having the diversity so that the team is successful. And
exactly.
most of corporate kind of gets stuck in one area, has all of the same. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
So tell us about Feng Shui and about your business.
So Feng Shui, and you say it beautifully.
Thank you. Thank you.
Um,
Like first say, what is it? Because people might, I feel like people have ideas, but they might not really actually know,
yeah,
like
yeah.
me.
Well, it's so Feng Shui is Chinese for wind, water.
Okay.
And I always say, if you think about it, wind, water being air, and water are the two most basic elements in life. So we all need air to breathe, and water. It's like one of those things we can't live very long without it. And so wind, water is really about life force energy, what we call qi. And feng shui is the art and science of creating balance and harmony in people's spaces. So we're looking at spaces and bringing in really the elements of outdoors, like how do you bring in live energy, how do you bring in light, how do you bring in water, that creates balance and harmony in your homes, your workspaces, gardens, really any space at all. How do you bring that in? So there are principles for how you do that. Look at a space and you adjust it so if things are stuck or there's no flow or people want to expand their life, there are things that we can do in their environment that support them in that.
So yeah, so it can be for home and business. I mean, at your home, even if you work from your home too, it can be home and business
Yeah.
together.
That's right. No,
Yeah.
that's exactly right. Right. It's used. I used to say, I probably shouldn't say this, but I used to say, for instance, Donald Trump, like years ago, it'd be like, wow, even Donald Trump used feng shui, but he was smart enough in real estate to understand, particularly if you're working with, people who are Chinese or from Hong Kong or whatever, but really smart businesses use feng shui when they're thinking about developing the land, where you pick the land, buildings. So it's actually used more in business than people realize. It's just not as common as, thinking just real estate, for instance.
Yeah, interesting. Well, it's funny. I told one of my friends that I was interviewing you, and I was like, I'm going to learn about feng shui. And she was like, she's a money expert. And she was like, I keep my money in the southwest corner. And I was like,
Ah,
okay.
that's
I was like, that sounds really fancy. I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah. Well, so we have what we call a bagua. It's even
Okay.
the tools. It's really a compass, and the bagua is sort of the school that I learned. If you walk in the doorway, the far left corner of a space, it can be your entire house or it can be a room, but that
Okay.
far left corner is what we call the wealth and prosperity area, which is really what she's talking about. So
Okay. Okay.
getting energized, you want to energize that area to increase your wealth and prosperity. And really it's not just money, it's about abundance of anything, but a lot
Yeah.
of associated with money. Yeah.
Well, and she's a money coach and a money expert.
Yeah,
So
it's perfect.
it
It's
makes sense
perfect.
for
Yeah,
her.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Okay, cool. So if someone wanted to get into the basics of feng shui, like where do you start? What do you think about? I'm looking around my house and I'm like, hmm.
Well, what I tell people without actually sort of using a lot of the tools, there are a couple things. One, I always say, and it's the most basic thing, is clear your clutter.
Yes.
Number one
Yeah.
offense anywhere, because the thing about feng shui, or the thing really about like life force energy, is the energy in your home is alive. The energy in your space is alive. People don't think of it as
Mm.
vibrant and alive, but when you fill it with clutter, it's like you're choking yourself. You're choking the energy. And so clutter is many things, but you usually know what it is because it's the place that you don't go to, right? Piles you don't want to look at.
Oh, Kate, you haven't even been to my house. Yeah.
Closets you don't want to open. That's a pretty good clue.
Okay.
It's funny when I work with people, they actually really do know. Like I'm saying, it sounds like it's kind of woo-woo or whatever, but when I work with people and I'll say, where do you go? Where do you not go? Tell me about your day in the
Yeah.
life. Mary, and we'll walk through your space. And I'll say,
Yeah.
more important, like, where do you not go? And those areas are the areas where there's something about them that people don't like. Generally, there's stuff in there that might be old. Like, you have to look at things and say, I've worked with lots of people after their divorces, they still have stuff from previous marriages in their space, and then they don't like to go there, and they don't realize
Mm.
everything retains energy. And so it's a matter of going in and saying, what do we want? I mean, this is a perfect any time of year for it. It's like really go through and sort of go through your
Right.
stuff and say, what do I want to keep? What do I not want to keep? But everyone's talking about Marie Kondo right now. What brings me joy, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and I always said when she came out, she's that she's that foundation. And then a lot of what we do in Feng Shui is on top of it. But what I'm talking about is things that people can really do and do right away. And then there are certain things that we look at. I actually have a free PDF that people get where it's looking at 9 areas in your home. And there are things like, look at electricity, look at your plumbing. Plumbing, if you have leaking faucets, it means you're losing money. I mean, water down, literally, I would say Feng
Mm.
Shui is the great metaphor, literally money down the drain.
Oh, good
So
thing I don't have a leaky faucet. We had one at one time and we fixed it pretty quickly.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it almost, I mean, there are certain things I look at, like
Good.
where is it, but water, right? Electricity, do you have enough lights? Because if you think about it, lights, when they're low, you feel a little depressed, right? So you want to have
Yes.
enough lights. You want the lights working. Make sure that they're not dark corners in your home, in your space, things like that.
Oh,
I
that's
don't know if that's helpful, but that's kind of the
yeah.
stuff that I look at, like really fundamental stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great because that's what I think people want to hear. And I mean, even myself, I want to hear it's what's, because I don't even know where to start. So yeah, the basics, that just kind of gets you even thinking. And obviously that's where you come in with your business too, but it kind of gets you thinking of like taking a look around your house. And actually
Right.
my husband, is really big on getting rid of clutter all the time. So much so that he has to ask me now about throwing things away because sometimes he'll want to throw something away that I actually need. Well,
Right.
need. We'll see. I'm getting better at it.
Right. Right.
um, but when I do, sometimes I have this feeling that overcomes me and I go in the room and I'm like, okay, I need to organize all these papers. And then I'm like decluttering like a maniac for like a
Right.
few hours.
Right.
Then I'm like, okay, now I feel better.
Right. Yeah. And so what you just said is the point is you do it and you actually feel better, right? And
Yeah.
you're like,
Yeah.
oh, that
Yeah.
feels good. It's like you don't even realize that stopped you from going into that area or
Right.
looking at it, or like you have to go looking and it's like, oh, I can't do it. I can't look at it. And trust me, I know all this stuff. I still do stuff. I had
Yeah.
a project and I looked at my room the other day in my office. I said, it looked like a bomb went off. And I said, before I can do anything else, I have to go in and do what I know I need to do. And it makes
Yeah.
all the difference in the world. And I'm
Yeah.
going to actually offer one other thing for
Yeah.
people is, so your desk, it's really important to have a clear desk. And I know people like to piles and stuff like that. But a lot of even, in my corporate life, applying Feng Shui in my desk, I always made sure my desk was clear, bring out things that I'm working on and just have that thing, not have
Yeah.
piles and piles and piles. And so, if you have files, how to use files, organize it so you can find things. And in this day and age where they used to say, oh, we're going to be a paperless society. Well, that never really happens. We're
Right.
pretty close, but
Right.
that never really happens.
Yeah.
So what do you do with that stuff? And so having a desk organized so that, and what I find is at the end of the day, I clear my desk and then I come in fresh. And that's really, really powerful. We don't realize that. It's not like, oh, you sit down and go, I have to figure out where I am.
Yeah.
It's like kind of an opening and a closing, and keeping your desk clear and organized is really important.
That's so funny because for corporate, right? Like you can walk around the areas and we move to an open space after a while and then you can see how people keep their space. As some people, there was nothing on there. It's like, does that person still work here? And then
Right.
other people, like the piles are so high, you're like, how can they work there? There's no space to work.
Right, right. Well, I had a boss who literally lived, but this was his personality. He lived like his piles of papers were like sandbags, like, protection, right? And when it was time to move a floor, it was like, who's going to help him move the papers? He didn't want to get rid of them. But it really was interesting. I think
Yeah.
he liked it that way.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was really interesting.
Yeah.
So,
I think also like with just trying to keep so many things in my brain all the time and running the house and all the stuff, the
yeah,
more that I find myself actually decluttering in some way, shape, or form, I feel it afterwards, like in my brain. Like I feel like a release of my body because
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
okay, it's like one less thing to like
right.
worry about or thinking about, even if I'm not like consciously thinking about it. I guess subconsciously somewhere I'm thinking
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. The other thing I'm going to add, and I just did this weekend, it was kind of just occurred to me when you said that, is that, um, in this technology age, we're thinking about paper, but a Sunday I spent time just saying I needed to organize all my apps on my phone.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Oh yeah.
And I had to tell you, I said, this is just like clearing clutter from, your desk. Like, clearing out all the phone messages,
Yes.
that are like done over, delete them, clear them out, not have the little red number saying I have 2 messages. And when it was done, I was like, I mean, that feng shui happens on many levels, but to start thinking that way and start saying, I don't need
Yeah.
to live like that. I don't need to go, I don't want to open that app because it's just annoying me. I have to see that message again. It's like, actually take the time and organize it. Anything. Your
That's
files,
that's a
electronic
very good point.
files. Yeah. So,
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay. So we talked about organization and decluttering is that's like a sense of, yes, release for the energies. Then
yeah.
what are some other things like for business? I mean, I guess it's different. I guess since it goes with home and business, it's fine. But I'm thinking for myself, for my business, like applying some of these things, like the decluttering, for example, or maybe doing some of the things like how my friend said, the money in the southwest corner or whatever. Like you incorporate certain things, I guess. So financials would be one thing. The decluttering and cleanliness is like another. Are there other kind of topics that go with the energy that you would be thinking about?
Well, so what we do is we look at areas of life.
Okay.
And so when we're looking at a bagua, we look at family, we look at wealth and prosperity, we look at what you call fame and recognition, which is how you want to be seen out in the world, relationships, children, creativity, helpful people, travel, career, and health. And so when people come to me, generally there's like something that I always say there's something out of balance. They may say, and I've helped people, why me, I don't know, but people who wanted to get pregnant, for instance, people want to have a family, people who want to have a relationship, so there's the money aspect, but there's other areas. There are people who have health issues.
Okay. Yeah.
Issues don't, I work with them more from a stress perspective, and a lot of it is like clearing the clutter and like reducing the stress in their home. But there are people who have illnesses, and there are things you can do around health. I always say health is everything. Without health you have nothing. And so there are areas in the bagua that you then look at and say, if somebody comes to me and says they want to get married, they want to have a relationship, want to get married, then I look at the floor plan and look at where, first of all, where they're blocked, like where the energy's blocked. But then there are things that you can do in your, what we call relationship area, to energize relationships, how to set your intention to say, this is what I want, and how to energize that area in your home. So there are different areas, and depending on the person, people have different interests or different focus on what we do. So I always say honey, money, and health. Like honey, money, so relationships, money, and
Yeah.
health are the three main things that people look at. But when I'm working with them, very often there are other related or corollary areas that we adjust as well.
Yeah.
I don't know, does that answer your question?
Oh my gosh. Yes. So yeah, I was just going to say, you said it much more eloquently than what I was asking. Cause I was like, I don't even know if I'm articulating clearly because money was like obviously an easy one for me to think of just
Yeah.
because of like business and growing business, logical. Right. But yeah, that was a really good way to put it. And even just, I like that, honey, money, and wealth. I'm going to remember that. But I could totally see how it goes right to other areas. That's kind of what I was interested in, is like where, because I think there's a lot of topics or a lot of places where feng shui can help people and it can do so much for them, but they don't realize, they don't know enough about it to even think, how could this help me?
Right.
That's what I find really fascinating about it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, a lot of it, and I've been doing some talks on this. I'm going to be doing some talks on this too. Is sort of a lot of it is we don't realize that there's the space, but then it's who we are in the space, and sort of the space we choose it. It reflects who we are. When we're adjusting the space, internal things are being adjusted within us, and so even though like you may move into a space and you have one experience, I move into it and I have another one, because who you are in that space is a different person. And so it's interesting, people just think a space is a space, is a space, is a space, but it's really, when I'm working with people, it's who are you, who's your, what's your family, what's your lifestyle, what's your dynamic in that space, to see, is it supporting you? Are the areas that you're concerned about balanced, if you will? Are the things that we need to do to adjust? And, a lot of people associate with feng shui, decorating. I always say it's not decorating, it's about transforming your life. But you can use colors, you can use, how you arrange the furniture, how you organize things. And there's lots of levels to that, but that's kind of when people think of feng shui, that's a lot of what it is. And that's what we're talking about. We're arranging things to create balance in your space to support you. So if you want, I work with people who say, I want to move, I want a new career, I want to change careers. Then we're going to look at that space a little bit differently for that person to support them in that. It's very, very interesting. It's very,
See,
yeah.
it's fascinating. That's why we're talking about it. Yeah, it's so interesting. And yeah, I think generally, I mean, I didn't even know how to pronounce it before. So, I think like people just have an idea. And like you said, for me too, what I imagine when I hear it is, yeah, you move your furniture around, for example.
Right.
But now I'm like realizing and seeing so many different aspects of it. And obviously from talking to you too, like, and energy. And now as an entrepreneur too, like I pay much more attention even to my energy, right? Because you have to do like so much more like on your own, and like you have to have the drive and the motivation to, and you really have to watch your energy levels, because if it's not a steady paycheck, so what are you doing for your business, kind of thing. And I'm much more in tune with my energy and where I put my time and my energy, what I do. So this is even more interesting for that, I think, more than I thought about for corporate.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you say that about energy, because, anyone who does business in energy, whether they're doing acupuncture, they're doing Reiki, or they're doing, even yoga, I always feel like we're all speaking the same language. It's just a different modality. So my modality is space. Somebody else's is the body, right? Somebody else is the
Right.
body. But I find that we all sort of speak the same language. But energy, I mean, we're surrounded by energy. We are energy. And so
Right.
how do we create that balance?
Yeah. Oh, that's, yeah.
Really important.
So you do feng shui for both corporate and business owners and personal. Can you tell us a little bit about the aspect of, the different ways that you work with people?
Yeah, well, so primarily, so I've been doing primarily homes and, apartments, people's personal lives. And then, I've done some corporate work. I've done some small businesses. I like businesses. And so the time back to this transition out of the corporate world, it was so much of my life. I know it, and I know how to apply what I know in feng shui to help businesses. And so, I've worked I just saw my dentist today. I feng shuied his office. I've done,
Oh, that's so cool.
dentists, I've done pediatricians. So I've done medical offices. I've done retail. The woman where I get my hair done had feng shui before, and she wanted me to feng shui her business. And so a lot of that is about sort of creating a productive environment. Has to do with like a business, like that's a perfect example, a business like that where she's a team of people. And so I worked with her team of people to understand what was working and what wasn't working. And ultimately it's about generating profit. But for her, it was really about making sure her team was taken care of, that they're productive. And so when we feng shuied it, it was interesting because there was a whole group of people that ended up leaving. And it turned out that they were sort of negative people that needed to leave.
Oh,
And I've done this in other offices where you can like arrange the space and you'll find out like the things that need to be cleared out. In this case, people left. And she said at first she was heartbroken they left. Then she said she made more money with less people after from the yeah, because people were much more productive. They were happier. That they had like there was this little negative element that was affecting the people around them.
Yes, that's why a lot of people talk about like who you surround yourself with, and like the 5 people you spend the most of your time with. And I fully believe in all of those things. I mean, people can either help lift you up or drag you down. So
that's exactly right.
you
And
have to
then my
choose
other
wisely.
great business story is I worked with a commercial real estate broker where he was like trying to sell 2 buildings, and it was during, it was after 2008 and the economy was slow. He wanted to sell those buildings, looking. One day he came in, he goes, I can't stand my office anymore. Can you do something with my office? And it was his business partner's office. So I arranged his desk and the entrance. And he said, I don't want the maintenance people to come in. I want the guy with the deal to come in the door. And he goes, I want the maintenance people to go to my business partner. It was an L-shaped office. You couldn't even see his business partner. So we arranged the entrance. And this happened like 20 minutes. We rearranged the entrance, we rearranged his desk. And I swear to God, like a day or 2 later, the developer came in and said, I have a deal. They not only bought their building, but they did an assemblage of an entire New York City block. Like, oh my God, that's like the power. And then P.S., his partner asked me to come in and feng shui his part. And he had a son he was having him work there, but he was kind of a deadbeat. He wasn't really helping out. And he didn't really know how to ask his son to leave. And I said, well, you need to set your desk up here. We need to empower you. We need to take your powerful desk over where your son sits, put it over here. And his son just left. There was never a conversation. He just left. And when feng shui is working, it's like, you don't need anything. We rearrange.
That's so crazy.
But these are like, I have a ton of these like stories.
Yeah.
That's how powerful rearranging the space is really.
That's incredible. Yeah. And I'm so happy you gave those examples too, because I think it's helpful for people to know and think about and put in perspective for themselves and just have an awareness of it, right, as a start. Because it does have such a big impact, and you could walk around not knowing.
Right. Well, and that's why, I say it's not I used to want to be a decorator, by the way, so I had a hard time letting go because I create beautiful spaces, but really what I'm doing is transforming spaces, transforming lives. And so it's like in the process making a beautiful space, but I'm not about just decorating. It's not just creating a beautiful space. It's really powerful.
You're putting the science and energy in there.
I don't know why that just moved me. It's really
powerful. That's fantastic. I mean, as someone that's also very strong in both like analytical and people, I found it a struggle for myself over the years of like balancing the two. But it's a fantastic way that you've really combined them and found,
incredible. It really is. And I'm hoping to, so I took a year, right? So I left my corporate business and I retired knowing that I said retire into this business. And so I'd been doing it on the side, and I took a year to reset and kind of figure out what my brand is, doing it
Yeah.
differently, all this stuff with social media. I mean, I went
Right.
through a huge, and that's what I want to say about transitioning careers too, is for me, it was a huge, even though I worked in technology, I had to learn a lot of stuff that I didn't know. I didn't know anything about sales. I didn't know anything about marketing. I didn't know anything about PR. I didn't know anything. I mean, it was really like,
Yeah.
oh my God. And so this past year was a lot about that and trying to figure out what what was my special brand.
Mm-hmm.
And what I came to realize is I'll always do feng shui for homes, always do feng shui for people, but I'm really interested in combining what I know working with corporate people,
Mm-hmm.
and I can do it on the health and wellness side, I can do it on the real estate side, I can do it on the productivity side, I can do it in a lot of places, but to not leave that entirely, that there are ways, how can I
Mm-hmm.
integrate that and have it be a part of what I'm doing, which I think is really important. I thought like, oh, I'm going to be done, but not really, because actually I liked the corporate part.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah.
It was time for me to leave. I was done. It was time for me to leave. But so now, kind of what you were alluding to before, to be able to take all that and integrate it back. So I feel like last year was about a deconstruction, reconstruction, launch this year,
Yeah.
and do a whole new way of doing business. So
Yeah, that's amazing. It's important
yeah,
to recognize too that you still enjoy corporate. I mean, you have so much experience there.
yeah,
So how you can incorporate all of the different things you enjoy, no matter what they are, you
yeah.
know?
That's exactly right. Yeah,
Excuse
right.
me, I got something in my throat. Yeah, I'll have a sip of water.
Yeah.
Um, so I always ask, this question. So good timing on the corporate part. I ask all of my guests, what skill from working in corporate America has helped you the most as an entrepreneur?
Um, it's such a good question. I mean, I learned so much that I've been able to apply, but I would say this past year, there were times when I think, I don't know what I'm doing. I mean,
Excuse me.
it felt like a big void. And, I was used to working with teams of people. I was used to having like an engineer. I was used to having like, my experts,
Yeah.
customers and stuff. But what I learned in all the years and all the projects and everything I did, there were times where it's like, nobody knew, like nobody had the answer, right? And it's learning how to do the best you can with what you know, see what you can learn, find the experts, like be willing to learn. And at certain points, if you have to make a decision or you have a deadline and you don't have everything, you have to kind of decide, what absolutely has to be done,
Mm-hmm.
and what can be, in my world of technology, what can be in a future release, what's a nice to have, right?
Right.
And so there's something about living in the unknown, even in a huge corporation. I went through mergers. Every merger was like something totally new,
Yep.
and you had to figure it out. You think, oh, you got a model. You don't have a model for that. I can tell you, you don't have a model for that. And we went through several, no model every time. So when I was sitting there in my little room all by myself, I remember I say, oh, corporation didn't know how to do that. Like, why would I think that I know how to do this, right? So it's helped. It's just given me comfort to know that and be willing to be with that, because that's hard.
It's
That,
very hard.
that's very hard.
It's
That
very hard.
ambivalence, that unknowing, maybe I'm making the wrong decision. And
Yes.
for me to trust that and trust that I will know, and maybe I made a mistake. I've made some mistakes along the way. Thought it was going to be the worst thing in the world. It was not. So anyways, I would say that learning how to be with the unknown and how to figure it out. Like, we're smart people. I think most people are smart, you know.
Yes.
And it starts for me with, pick up the phone or call somebody or ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That's fantastic. I 1000% agree with all of that. It's definitely an adjustment, but corporate, especially like large corporation. I mean, JP Morgan's a big one, you get a lot of that experience there in those big companies, because you still have to do something and have to figure something out. But like you said, it's never the same.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And we do it, and it gets done.
Yes. Yes. Surprise. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Can you also tell the audience where they can find out more about you?
So I have a website. It's
Excellent.
Kate MacKinnon. I made it really easy. It's my name, Kate-MacKinnon .com. And there I do have it's more information about feng shui. I have some, I have a blog and stuff like that, but also if you want to get in touch with me, if you're interested in I have what I call an exploratory call. So it's a free 30-minute exploratory call if someone's interested in finding more about what that would be for them for feng shui. As well as you can contact me through, it's a little mail service. And then I have my PDF with easy feng shui 9 tips.
Awesome. Yes.
Which
I'm
is
sure
great.
people want to see that.
Great.
That's great because, you got to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere.
Right.
You got to start somewhere. Yeah. No, it is. It's like we were talking about earlier. It's like some basic stuff, but when you really look at it, it's just really fundamental, important stuff.
Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
Kate, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate this. So I'm going to be thinking about feng shui and energy like all day. And it was awesome. Thank you so much for explaining all of this and for sharing your time and your experience. So.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on and talking about the thing that I'm so passionate about.
Yeah, it's amazing. It shows because it shows. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Mary. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Bye. Hi, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Kate. I found it really interesting that she spoke about clutter and how that could impact your space and impact your energy, which I feel like is something we probably know but don't really pay much attention to. And just keeping in mind now what an impact it could have on your life and your business, I'm definitely going to be more aware of it. I also loved that she talked about just how energy impacts you and how it impacts everything around you. There's so many things that, you walk through the day and you don't really think about how it's impacting you. Your room is just your room. And I don't know, she just got me thinking about so many other things about how when you walk into a space, how you feel in that space and how you put yourself into that space can make a difference for you. And I'm definitely considering that too with not just myself and my home and my family, but also my business. So if you'd like to hear more about Kate, we have all of the links to her website and her social media in the show notes, so check that out. It's Kate-MacKinnon.com. If you'd like to hear more about the Transitions Collective or you want to reach out, please contact me. I'm at mary@thetransitionscollective.com, and we're launching our membership community shortly. So if you're not signed up on our list yet, go to thetransitionscollective.com/community, and you'll find out a lot more about what we have in store for you. Thanks for watching, and until next time, bye.